Alexandra Haddow, thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Oh, thank you.
For people who don't know who you are you?
A big question. Who am I? I'm a comedian.
Yeah.
And I do a bit of writing. I've accidentally become a DJ at a club night as well. But mostly I'm a comedian. I tell jokes and for money, which is weird.
And your show is about sex and politics.
Yeah.
And we can't talk about any sex jokes here, but we can talk about the politics.
We can talk about the politics, that's fine.
It's called Third Party, and it's about you being disillusioned with politics.
Yes.
And you want a third option.
Yes.
What's wrong with the two options that are there at the moment?
What's right with the two options? Essentially, it's about how I've pretty much been a Labour voter all my life, and disliked the Tories. A very unique position to be in. No, everyone loves them, and then at the last election, I just felt like they were just. I mean, I think everyone gets to this stage in their life, but you just realise, oh, they're sort of two sides of the same coin, or at various points in history, they feel like they're just, almost virtually on the same side. So I got really angry and fed up and thought, well, what if I kind of made a show about the sort of fantasy of what you could do if there was another option?
Yeah. So there is now emerged after this general election another option, which is Nigel Farage's Reform Party.
Of course.
Yeah.
Everyone's favourite.
Yeah. What do you think about them?
I think they are completely opportunistic. I see what they're doing. They're trying to they're trying to divide people even more. They're trying to vilify the wrong people, I think. It's so funny to me that, Nigel Farage wants to, demonise, immigrants and people coming over here trying to find work and, stood on the cliffs of Dover, pointing out boats. It's such a weird life choice for me, when in fact, he's a former banker, and I think the people, when you realise who these people actually care about, and I think a lot of people in the end do, it just takes a lot of people longer to realise, then you see that they're only ever sort of out for themselves. They're only out for the narrative. They're only out for the sort of here and now.
I think one thing about Nigel Farage that might have made him popular recently is that at the moment we've got quite a few boring politicians. I mean, we've had Rishi Sunak and then Keir Starmer. In the 5 years previous to Keir Starmer, we had quite a lot of chaos. We had Brexit, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss. Those years must have been quite easy to joke about. It must be quite difficult to make jokes about this modern era with the Rishi Sunaks and the Keir Starmers, who just seem quite dull in comparison.
Yeah. I don't want to tell people that they're going to come and be depressed with an hour of jokes about boring politicians for an hour. It's not that at all. I kind of lightly touch on them, and then it's more, I'm picking out sort of stranger elements to the news and how we're all going to sort of cope with the news. Essentially, it's a show about what we do in between watching the news to cope with what we see on there.
You said you were formerly a Labour supporter. I guess you're not too keen on the current version of Labour.
No.
Do you have much hope that they're going to be able to achieve anything?
I think, no, at the moment, no, I don't really. Because I don't think I think they're sort of pledging their allegiance, I should say, to big business and stuff like that. And actually people vote Labour because they want to move away from that and they want to feel a little bit like someone's in their corner, rather than, saying they're going to tax non-doms and all that sort of stuff and then being like, actually we're not, what we like. And then you feel a bit sort of like, okay, I mean, what's the point of that? I mean, it's called the Labour Party,
So Keir Starmer's popularity has plummeted in his first 6 months faster than any other Prime Minister.
And it wasn't sky high ever, was it?
Well, no. He won with a tiny majority.
Yeah.
I mean, massive majority in Parliament, tiny majority of the votes.
Yeah.
Why do you think he's so unpopular?
I think, honestly, it's because he doesn't seem to stand for anything. So I think, with people like Nigel Farage, with people like Jeremy Corbyn, with people on the sort of on the far right or I mean, I don't think Jeremy Corbyn's far left, but people would call him far left. With people on each extreme, whether you agree with them or not, you know what they believe in or what they purport to believe in. Whereas I think people like Keir Starmer, I mean, I always compare it to that sketch in The Fast Show where the guy just sort of agrees with whatever the last person has said. I feel sort of like that's what he's like. I feel like a lot of people think, oh, he'll just say whatever he thinks he needs to say to get in power. And that's different from trying to listen to different groups of people and see what will work. I think he's just sort of, yeah, you're right. Oh, no, hang on, it's mostly going that way. I'll go that way. So I think that's why his popularity is low, because he doesn't seem to stand for anything.
One person that you say you love in the show, and I feel like so many other people love him as well, and he's quite the opposite to Keir Starmer, is Mick Lynch, the trade union.
Prime Minister we should have had.
Who's recently announced he's retiring.
I know, I'm so gutted.
Why do you like him so much, and do you think we need more politicians, people in politics like him?
Yeah, I really think we need a lot more people in politics like him. Like you say, people are attracted to... Well, I mean, I don't mind a politician being boring. Do you know what I mean? In theory. But I think with the sort of general population, of course, somebody stands out if they have slightly more personality, and also if they seem more human as well. I don't mind somebody that's human and boring. There's a lot of boring people out there doing good stuff. But I think Mick Lynch, I think what really cut through all the noise with Mick Lynch was the fact that he never got flustered whilst being asked stupid questions about really basic rules of striking or unions or anything like that. And you could tell that there was a lot of intelligence behind him, but actually what he was saying was just the facts. And people couldn't get around that with him because he knew what he believed in. He knew the facts of what was going on. He knew the rules of, a union and how people have to strike to get better working pay and conditions. And he just seemed to have such disdain for the establishment, for reporters that were interviewing him, for people that would try to trip him up or, bring up his Facebook profile picture or try and make him out like some kind of, extreme left, sort of disruptive, awful person. He's just trying to get people fair wages. That's his job. And I think that really cut through for people and made him sort of a bit of a hero, really.
Why do you think there's so few people like him in politics? Do you think it's just because people growing up are so disillusioned by it all that they don't want to get involved?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, definitely. I also think that it's a class issue. I think that people with ambitions in politics to be the leader are often not the people that actually want to get stuff done or care about the constituents. And actually, your ambition in politics to become, foreign secretary or anything like that, often, not always, I mean, you can be a good person, but I think it becomes more about personal ambition than it does about, gaining the rights for your workers or this change for your constituents or whatever it is. So I think that's where it kind of divides. And I think if you've grown up in a place where you've seen the injustice all the time, you're more concerned with actually helping people. Whereas I think if you've, gone through the sort of private school, Oxbridge route and you've never really had to touch on any... I'm not saying you haven't had to have any hardships in your life if you're rich. Like, that, of course you have. But I think you maybe haven't had a sense of, like, I can help these people in a certain way in Parliament. Do you know what I mean? And often people are like, oh, well, I can help, this business that's funded this for me, or this person that's given me 200 grand to do a private function, or, it's so open to corruption. And I think that's kind of where it splits off, and that's why we don't get as many Mick Lynches in the leadership roles in politics. Are
you having to, because politics moves so quickly, are you having to, like, update your jokes?
Oh, yeah. I had a joke. So I wrote this show originally in sort of first half of 2024, and then
so much has changed since.
I know, and honestly, so the election was July the 4th, and the Edinburgh Fringe Festival started on August the 2nd or something. So I had 28 days to change the tense of a lot of my jokes and add some in. But that's actually what's made the show fun. I've taken out a lot of stuff. I mean, I had a couple of jokes that I loved about Rishi Sunak, but it feels like he's dropped off the face of the earth.
People have forgotten about him.
Completely forgotten about him. So at the top of every show, really, as I record this, I'm 2 shows into the tour, and I've added a joke and changed a joke each time. So it's kind of a rolling show, really. And
another person that you joke about in your show is Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Loads of people think he's an evil genius who's going to take over the world. Loads of people also think he is a superhero who's going to save the human race, take us to Mars and rescue us from doomed planet Earth. What do you think?
Oh, I think the complete opposite. I think he's one of the most genuinely stupid people to ever be in such a powerful position. And in the current climate, I think that's saying a lot. That's actually quite an achievement, I think.
It's funny because a lot of the things he says come across as stupid, but he surely can't be.
I know what you mean. I think I think he's definitely intelligent in certain ways, but I think he doesn't really have a clue about a lot of the stuff that he's talking about. And I think actually he used to be, I mean, I'm not saying you can like lose intelligence, but I think 10 years ago I would have said, oh, maybe I don't necessarily agree with some of his worldviews, but there's an intelligent man. But I think now there's a very strange aura about him where he doesn't seem to be fully sort of clicked in. It's quite strange. He seems to be quite detached and quite sort of weirdly vacant. So I don't know what's changed there. But no, I wouldn't say he's going to save the world. I mean, I think he said to UNICEF, didn't he, give me a plan to solve world hunger for $6 billion. And I think they spent a month doing that. And he said, no, I'm going to buy Twitter instead. And I think, that should be the defining moment of his life, that he's just actually chosen complete chaos and, the road to fascism rather than helping the human race.
One thing I think, is trying to stop with Twitter is cancel culture.
Yeah.
And you dropped out of Latitude Festival last year.
Yeah,
because
last year, yeah.
Barclays was sponsoring it.
Yeah.
Do you think that's an important, cancel culture is an important thing to exist if people in society don't like something, they have the opportunity to cancel them?
But I think cancel culture is it's a popular debate at the moment. Cancel culture can only happen if nobody wants to watch your thing or pay for your thing. So you can only get cancelled if you don't have an audience. And if you don't have an audience, then you don't have an audience because they don't want to hear what you've got to say, if you see what I mean. So it's all very well saying, cancel culture is horrendous. And I don't agree with somebody having all their work taken off them because there's a tweet 15 years ago that was maybe a bit ill-judged. I do think that's, extremely binary and I think often you can tell if a person has either changed or that's not quite what they meant or it's been taken out of context. But I think a lot of the time when people talk about cancel culture, they're essentially saying some people have heard what I've said and not liked it. Do you know what I mean? Oh, now I've been cancelled. And you feel like saying, you look at their tour dates or their shows or whatever they are, and you think, well, you're still doing stuff. You're now just doing stuff to people that either think you agree with this thing that you once said or whatever, or that you actually believe in. And so you're essentially narrowing down your audience. But I think there's stuff that I wouldn't joke about just because I couldn't make it funny. And at the end of the day, as much as I'm sort of trying to pass slight comment on society, you are going to come to me for an hour of laughs, hopefully. So there's stuff that I would like to say that I think people would try and cancel me for, but not because it's some horrendous opinion. It's just because they wouldn't agree with what I have to say.
And I think people come to you for a barrel of laughs to a politics show is because so many people have lost interest and they're so disillusioned.
Yeah.
I sort of touched on it at the start, but why do you think people are so disillusioned?
I think people are disillusioned because they feel like nobody's in their corner. And I think different parties are sort of trying to commandeer certain groups, like vulnerable groups or extremely privileged groups, and sort of just tell them, oh, actually, it's because of them. And I think people in the middle can kind of see what's going on, and they feel like, oh, nobody's actually fighting for me. Nobody's actually trying to make my daily life better. And it does also feel like a lot of politicians, like you say, are sort of out for themselves, they're out for their career, they're out for their image. And I hate the way that it's going. American politics feels like X Factor or, this kind of weird, everything feels like a TV show in America, and I think it's horrendous. And I think it's starting to kind of seep over into our politics a little bit. It's such an obvious thing to say that Boris Johnson would have never been in power if it wasn't for, his appearance as a sort of a bumbling idiot on various sort of panel shows and stuff. And it's because people are like, oh, he's funny, isn't it? And it's like, no, this guy is actually, this guy has power to sort of change things that actually affect your life.
Do you think that people should have hope and optimism about the future?
Westminster and Parliament seems like the slowest, most ineffective way to get anything done. And, direct action and stuff, and more sort of active groups, I would say, people that are protesting in a really meaningful way, and boycotts and stuff like that feels like a more effective way to try and get the message across of what you're trying to say. But I think that all this does, our current political climate, is kind of, it's kind of water the soil for somebody in sort of 10, 15 years that comes out and is a kind of, revolutionary, inspiring character that makes people think, hang on a minute, here's someone I can believe in again.
So there is a bit of hope for the future.
There is a bit of hope for the future. I think it'll just take a while. And in the meantime, let's all just have a bit of fun.
Well, in the meantime, another thing in the future is the rest of your tour.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us why people should buy a ticket?
Come and essentially have a bit of a laugh at the end of the world. But it's not. A lot of the show is personal. A lot of the show is about stuff that I've tried in my personal life to be a bit more. I don't know. I say rebellious, but really it's just a bit like, you do feel like you're sort of facing your own mortality a little bit more. I don't think we were built to know everything that was going on in the news all over the world all of the time, 24/7. I mean, I've had my phone stolen, so I'm in a blissful ignorance for a few days. But I think essentially come to my show for an hour of respite, to sort of switch off. Even though I'm kind of talking about current affairs, it's more to sort of laugh at it and at the end give you a bit of hope actually in the show.
Good. And your final show is in this theatre here?
In this theatre right here on the 28th of March. Please come. It's so big. Look how big it is.
Leicester Square Theatre.
Leicester Square Theatre in London. There's tickets, so please come.